Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and salam sejahtera to everyone who's watching this video clip. Okay, my name is Saiful Syahmi bin Alias, and I am from Universiti Teknikal Malaysia, Melaka, UTEM. Okay, so today I would like to present my thesis, which is the investigation of mechanical and physical properties of natural fiber reinforced composite by using the Taguchi method, and the fiber that I chose is the coconut coir. Okay, for introduction for my thesis, in today's society there is a great deal usage of natural fiber in our globe. Biocomposite are one of the most significant sources that are discovered. It is characterized as biocompatible and eco-friendly composites. And this biocomposite can be found in a lot of variety of forms, including films, membranes, moldings, coatings, particles, fiber, and forms. The history of natural fiber reinforced composite began 3,000 years ago with the construction of wall dwellings out of clay reinforced with straw. And in the modern history, Henry Ford had the brilliant idea in 1930 to study the natural materials with the same strength as chicken bones. Since then, the natural fiber have grown in many different areas, including the product business and the aeronautic industry. Coconut fiber, which is also known as Cocos nucifera L, is derived from the husk of a coconut. Although being a secondary crop, it has a major place in terms of bark output. The coconut trees produce 50 to 100 fruits every year, which take a year to mature. The husk of coconut symbolizes the whole fiber areas covering wrapping the fruit, which includes both the interior exocarp, edible portion, and the outer mesocarp, which has the fiber in it. The coconut pith is made up of non-fibrous parasyllamatous husk cells that account for up to 50% to 70% of the overall weight of the husk. And there are two types of coconut in Malaysia, which is pandan and matak. The preparation of the region is the first step in processing of each coconut for matak and pandan. Also, there are over 300 eco-types of coconut, and the quality and quantity of fiber vary. The length and the thickness of the fibers varies even within the same type. And the best fiber are said to be found in the husk or near ripe to ripe nuts. Okay, the next slide in my presentation is about the methodology. Methodology is done to underlie the approach and reasoning of the research. It reveals the study methods that were used in the research as well as the ideas or concept in order to design a strategy that is appropriate for our goals. Okay, the first step in the methodology section is the factor and label selection. Okay, from the table in the slide above, there were two factors involved, which is 1 and 2. Okay, factor 1 represent the minimum level, while factor 2 represent the maximum level. And there were 4 selection of factors in this study. The first one is coconut core, second is cassava starch combined with the glycerol, third one is PVA glue, and the fourth one is the fiber size. All of these 4 factors are stated in percentage except the fiber size. Okay, the second process begins with the sample preparations. Sample preparation begins by preparing the sample involved to form a composite, which is coconut core, cassava starch combined with the glycerol, and polyvinyl alcohol (PVA). The total of samples that need to be provided are 8 samples for each testing, which required the total of 16 samples for 2 testing. Okay, the first step is by mixing the process. The cassava starch and glycerol are weighed for 42 grams. Then the mixing factors must be put in a cup or bowl together. After that it must be blended for it to be equally mixed using the blender machine. Second is adding the fiber into the mixing element. The fiber used is the coconut coir. After the both element is prepared, then the coconut coir, which has been cut into its size, being weighed for 50 grams and be mixed together with the blended cassava starch and glass wrong. The mixing process for these three factors must be very thorough to avoid the sample produced become ruptured. Then the PVE was weighed for 3 grams and added into the mixture for it to be bound together. The step is the preparing the mold. After finish mixing all of the four factors together, then the mold must be prepared for the factors mix. For the element mix to be placed into it, the mold must be cleaned first to remove all the residual object around it. Then the mylar polyester film is prepared to be placed at both upside and downside of the sample on the mold. And after that, the mixing factors was put into the mold lately. The next step is setting the hot press machine. The hot press machine first must be set to its specific point before the mold containing the sample be put in it for heating and pressing process. The temperature setup for the process is 155 degrees Celsius and the pressure needed for the pressing is 10 tons. The time set for heating process is 60 minutes. Okay, next step is placing the mold into the hot press machine. Okay, the mold prepared was put into the hot press machine and the time setup was 60 minutes for the heating process and 10 minutes for the cooling process. And the last one is the completing the process. After 60 minutes of time, the process for heating and cooling for the sample was complete. The sample were brought out from the hot press machine and taken out from the mold. Then all of the equipment were cleaned out and the machine was switched off. The sample finish is ready to be cut into its preferred size and to be tested by using the testing method needed. Okay, the third process in methodology is the testing. The testing is done to determine what is predicted to be seen and then compare it to what is actually observed. So in this research, there are two different tests were done, which is Tensile Test and the water absorption test, in order to obtain the result required. Both of these testing are using its own ASTM. Okay, first test is the Tensile Test. Tensile test is done to determine how strong a material is and how extensible it may be before the breaking point occurs. In this research project, Tensile Test is conducted according to the ASTM D638. And according to this ASTM D638, the speed rate which is suitable for the testing is between 5 to 500 mm per minute. But in this test, 5 mm per minute of speed rate were used based on the fiber required. The specimen is taking time between half minute to 5 minutes before it will rupture due to the stress applied on it. Okay, for the second test is the water absorption test. Water absorption test are also performed as moisture test. It's also one of the tests that were conducted in this research project other than Tensile Test. This test undergoes according to the ASTM D570 for coconut coir. The first process in this test is by cutting the sample into 1 cm times 1 cm size. And there were 8 samples needed in this test. After all of the 8 samples are being dried in the oven for 6 hours. The temperature set for the oven is 105 degrees, and after 6 hours, the dried sample is brought out from the oven for weighing is weighed. All of the 8 samples need to be taken the weight for 3 times, and average weight for each of the samples are recorded. The thickness for each of the samples also were taken before the test. Then the samples were put in the small container which contain distilled water, and the absorption test will begin for the 2 hours of time. The next chapter is about the result and discussion. Okay, in this chapter, it will discuss about the result and data obtained from the Tensile Test and water absorption test that were carried out. This will discuss about the mechanical and physical properties of natural fiber composite which contain in the coconut core. All of the statistical analysis is carried out and the discussion was discussed based on the result that obtained from the Taguchi method. Okay, the first one about the result is about the effect of different material parameter on tensile strength. Okay, this testing on tensile strength or tensile test is using examples of specimen with different parameters applied to it. The highest value for ultimate tensile strength is sample number 8, which is 10 MPa, while the lowest ultimate tensile strength is sample number 1, that is 0.3 MPa. These differences occur because the increasing of fiber and the composition of the other material. The coconut fiber increased from 10% to 15%, and the amount of cassava starch combined with the glycerol increased from 40 to 55%, while the PBA will increase from 2.5 to 5%. And because of the cassava starch and glycerol is an excellent addition property, a high tensile strength is required to break the bond between the metric composition and reinforcement. Okay, the figure in this slide presentation shows the sample of the composite which is done the tensile test on it. As we can see, there is the fracture which applied to the sample above. The second result about the effect of different materials parameter on water absorption test. Water absorption test is one of the tests that were conducted in this research project other than tensile test, and this test undergoes according to the ASTM D570 for coconut core. The result obtained for water absorption test were slightly different from minimum and maximum parameters. Based on the observation, the average weight for minimum parameters of the sample were increased after the experiment. From 0.3 gram turned into the 0.7 gram, and caused the difference for 0.4 gram between before and after the experiment. And also the thickness of the sample were increasing from 4.6 cm to 5.49 cm and make it more thick before the test began. For the maximum maximum parameters, the weight also increasing from 0.4 gram to 0.7 gram and caused the difference between 0.3 gram. The thickness also has changed a bit from 4.4 cm to 4.5 cm. This type of factor occurs because the amount of water that were absorbed into the reinforced composite during 2 hours of the water absorption test. And here is the sample of the composite of the water absorption test, which is before the test and after the test applied to it. The next result is about the analysis of result by Taguchi method. The Minitab software was used as to evaluate for the significant and the interaction between the parameters of the experiment, and also to identify the optimal combination of parameters for the natural composite. Okay, from the figure above, it shows the response table for the signal noise ratio for water absorption test and the tensile test. And the signal to noise ratio which describe the larger is better, and there were 4 ranks included. The rank number 1 describes the best factor that affecting the composition of the fiber. Okay, measure of robustness are used in Taguchi design to discover the characteristic that decrease the product or process variability by limiting the influence of uncontrolled factors, which is noise factors. Design and process characteristics that may be manipulated are known as control factors. Noise can only be regulated during experimenting and not during manufacturing product usage. Lastly, for the conclusion, basically, this research focused on the investigation of mechanical and physical properties of natural fiber reinforced composite, which is the coconut core. The analysis results is very important as it is to investigate the optimal parameters supported for optimizing the effect of matrix and reinforced composite to the composition properties. And to level and for factor in full factorial design of experiment was chosen and conducted to conduct the whole experiment by using the Taguchi method. And from this analysis, it can be observed that the mixing of cassava starch and glass rod was the most important factor that made the specimen become more reinforced. Also, the presence of PVA in the mixing has made the composition become more structured, as PVA is an additive factor in the full factorial design. Okay, the objective of this study was attained and completed by determining the optimal parameters for the metric and the reinforced composite. Okay, that's all from me.